Using Power BI web version, click on Create New Report. Then we'll have to add our data. Click on the Excel. We'll then upload a file and browse to upload where the file has been downloaded. We're using Lab 6.5 data. Then to upload the data, we'll have to sign into our account. Once it's made the connection, go ahead and click on Next. We'll then select the tables we want brought into Power BI, and I want customers, products, and sales transactions. So put a checkbox next to all three of those tables. Then click on Create, and it takes a few moments for the data to be loaded into Power BI. Our data has been loaded in, and we can see all three of those tables on the right side. We'll have to recode some of the data because variables like customer ID or customer zip have been brought in as a numeric value. But we want it to be categorical because we can't add or subtract customer IDs. It's simply a categorical description for each customer. Click on Open Data Model. And if this isn't at the top of your page, go ahead and click on Mobile Layout and then toggle to Web Layout. And usually that button will appear then. Let's begin in the products table. Product code has been identified as a whole number or a numeric value, but that's actually a categorical variable. So let's change that to text. We'll do the same thing to customer ID and the sales transaction. It's been coded as a whole number or a numeric value, but we want it to be a categorical. Also for product code, sales employee ID, we can't add or subtract sales employee ID. It doesn't make sense. So we'll change it to text format. Sales order ID. And customer ID. Finally, customer zip. The last thing we want to do is take customer state, and notice the data category is uncategorized, but customer state should be for the state or province. So Power BI will now recognize this as geographic data. Let's go back to the report page. Click on the tab up at the top. Let's refresh the page so that all the changes we made over in the data model are brought over to the report. So let's start by creating a visualization. I'm going to select Stacked Column Chart. The blank chart should appear on the canvas, and let's load our data into it. So make sure that it's selected. And I'm going to select sales order quantity sold, and product description under the products table will be my x-axis. Just to make our workspace a little bit bigger, I'm going to hide the filters for now. Let's clean this up a little bit. Let's change the title. It's kind of long and wordy. So under the format your visual, click on that. Under general, let's expand the title menu and make this much simpler. So let's clear out some of sales order, product description, and let's just put number of cases sold. Let's clean up the vertical and horizontal axes as well. So click on Add Data to your visualization, and where it has the X and Y axis, click on the down arrow next to product description, and we'll select rename for this visual. Let's just get rid of that underscore. So it says product description. And we'll do something similar for the y-axis. Click on the down arrow, rename for this visual, and rather than this long name, we'll just call it sales order quantity sold. Let's add our second visualization. Click anywhere on the blank canvas to get out of the original visualization we're working in, and then click on another stacked column chart. I'll make this just a little bit bigger. For this one, we're going to add product description and then sales order ID. Sales order ID I want to be on the y-axis, and it defaults to count of sales order ID. Let's clean these up just like we did for the other visualization. I'm going to rename for this visual. Just get rid of that underscore. Same thing for count of sales order. I'll rename for this visual, and I'm just going to call it sales transactions. And let's change the title of this one as well. Click on Format Your Visual. Under the General tab, expand title, and let's call it number of sales order transactions. Let's build a third visualization now. Click out of the second one we were working in. And under the Build Visualization tab, let's select a line chart. I'm going to move this one up here. And maybe I'll resize everything just while I'm here so that we can see everything just a little clearer. All right, so back into the line chart, I'm going to select sales order date for my y-axis. I'm going to select sales order date for my x horizontal axis. So I'm going to drag and drop that into the x-axis. It automatically creates this hierarchy, year, quarter, month, day. We don't need that much. So under the drop-down menu, date hierarchy is default checked. Let's just select sales order date and get rid of that. And then for my y-axis, I'm going to select sales order ID. It defaults to count, which is what I want. Let's go ahead and rename these to clean them up. For sales order date, I'm going to rename this as day, and I'll put the year. These are in the year 2026. And then count of sales order, let's rename that to count of sales transactions. Let's now add a secondary y-axis. I'm going to take sales order quantity sold and drop it into the secondary y-axis. I know it looks a little messy. We'll address that here shortly. Let's rename this as sales order quantity sold. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger just temporarily so we can look at this. Notice that our axes are not aligned. The one on the left for count of sales transactions is at 5. The one on the right for sales order quantity sold is at 40. So it's a little misleading or hard to interpret this. So let's fix this. With the line chart selected, click on Format Your Visual, and under the y-axis, the default is on auto. Let's change the minimum to 0 and the maximum to 40. Now, both variables are in the same scale. And let's go ahead and rename this visual. Click on the General tab, expand title, and we'll simply rename it Sales by Day. Okay, and then I'll make it a little bit smaller so it fits the rest of them. Let's make one more visualization, so click out of that. Our last visualization is going to be a filled map. Click on Filled Map over in the Build Visual menu. Let's now drag some geographic location data to this. We now want to put the customer state into this filled map. So expand the customers table and take customer state and put it into the location field. So notice that each of the states are now highlighted in blue for where I sell the beer. What I want this to look like though, is I want the states that purchase more cases of beer to be a darker blue. So how I'm going to adjust this, I'm going to select the map and then click on Format Your Visual. Under Fill Colors, I'm going to select the function or the conditional formatting option. So rather than simply coloring each customer state, I want this to be based on the sum of the sales order quantity. And the format style will be a gradient. So the lowest value will be a light blue. The highest value will be a dark blue. Click OK. Now, as you can see, the states are color-coded based on the amount of beer they sell. When we hover over, it just shows the customer state. So I think I also want the amount of beer that they purchased to show as well. Before we do that, let's go ahead and clean this up a little. Let's change the title to Number of Cases Sold by State. And then back in the Add Data to Your Visualization, we're going to add a tooltip for sales order quantity. So take sales order quantity, drag it into the tooltips area. And let's rename it right here with the down arrow, rename for this visual. and we're going to rename it as number of cases sold. So now when I hover over each state, it shows the number of cases sold to Texas, 211, and so forth for each state. So there's our 4 visualizations, and they can each act as filters to one another because they're connected. If I click on Texas, for example, my other visualizations filter based on just the transactions for Texas. Or if I select another state, Missouri, everything is now filtered on that. Select the same state again to reset the filters and select all the states. You can even select multiple states by selecting one and then holding the Control key and selecting a second one. This works the other way around too. So maybe I just want to look at Imperial Stout sales. So click on Imperial Stouts in the first bar chart. And then everything is adjusted to how many Imperial Stouts we sold and on which days they sold. Let's move on to the assessment questions. I'll reset my filters. Which state had the highest sales based on the number of cases sold? Because the states are color-coded based on the sum of their sales transactions, the darkest blue, in this case Texas, is the one that sold the most. Which type of beer appears on the most customer orders from Texas? Let's filter on Texas. And we can see that the type of beer that sold the most is Imperial Stout, based on the 2 bar charts on the left. Which state does not drink Imperial IPA? There's a few ways we could do this. We could click each state and see which one has not purchased any Imperial IPA. There I see it's Arkansas. Or I could filter on IPA and notice which states are blank. Kansas purchased 1, whereas Arkansas is not colored at all, so that would be a 0. Which day had the highest number of cases of pale ale sold? Let's filter on pale ale, and then we'll look which day had the highest. That would be Tuesday, March 3rd, 2026, where we had 2 sales transactions and sold a total of 19 cases. Let's reset this. On which day was the highest number of cases of stout sold in Missouri? Because we're filtering on more than one field, we'll have to add a page level filter to answer this question, because I can't select more than one of these filters outside the visualization without it resetting the other one. So what I'm going to do is take customer state and add it to a filters on this page. Then I'll filter on Missouri and then select Stout to further filter. Now we're just looking at sales transactions in Missouri for the stout beer, and we can see the highest number of cases were sold on January 22nd.